So the first part of the talk, I kind of sketched the long-term implications of this vision that I call the global brain. Now I will try to explain to you what is the scientific background behind this vision. I want to give you the theoretical framework and a little bit of a glimpse on the scientific work we are doing about it in our institute. So the idea is that the global network, the World Wide Web, is evolving into something like an intelligent entity, a mind that can solve problems, that can do things. So what do we mean by the mind? The mind is an intelligent, intentional, goal-directed entity that is able to sense what's going on and that is able to act in relation to its sensations. What is the web? I define the web as a complex network of people and technologies with ever-increasing capabilities for information storage, distribution, and processing. Now, the whole idea of the global brain paradigm is that this web is evolving into some kind of a mind. So in what way can the web become a mind? To understand that, we first need to have a view of the mind that's not the kind of a mystical view that philosophers tend to have, but a scientific view, something that can be operationalized, something that can be implemented. So I call this a cybernetic view of the mind. I see the mind, first of all, as a goal-directed system. Goal-directed, that means it has certain things that it prefers, some things it would like to achieve. In order to know what it wants to achieve, it needs to have a value system. So a mind is something that tries to maximize value, and that value is sometimes called benefit, happiness, utility, fitness. It doesn't matter what you call it, but the idea is that there is a preference for certain things over other things. The mind tries to achieve these values by exploiting opportunities whenever opportunities appear, by evading dangers, solving problems, or more generally by what I call tackling challenges. Now, tackling challenges requires intelligence. You need to know how to tackle the challenge. First of all, you need to perceive what's going on. You need to gather information. Second, you need to process that information. And processing information means that you need to have knowledge. You need to know what things mean. You need to know that if you see some X, then it means that there also is some Y, or that some Y may at some later stage appear. So you need to have rules of the form Fx then Y. By applying those rules, you can reason. By reasoning, you may be able to solve your problems. A mind not only needs theoretical reasoning on information, it also needs to act in the world. It needs to enact, to implement the chosen strategy. This enaction will change the world, and then there will be a feedback from the world back to the mind. So the mind will perceive the changed situation, which is affected by its own action, but will also be affected by all kinds of things happening in the world that the mind does not control. New challenges will appear. When the mind sees that there is a deviation between what it ideally would like to have and what really is there, it will perform a new action to correct the situation, to try to change the deviation. At a higher level, if there are constant deviations, if there are systematic deviation between what the mind expects there will be and what is actually there, it means that the knowledge used is not correct. It means that the mind will have to learn. So there needs to be a learning mechanism to correct knowledge that makes incorrect assumptions. So here is a scheme, my cybernetic scheme of the mind. Information comes in as the process I call perception. Inside the mind, it's being processed, and while processing, it's compared to the values. That's where the deviation is established between what's the case and what ideally you would like to be the case. In order to correct the deviation, you need to choose and perform the right action. The action affects the world, but the world also affects what happens. New challenges come in. The net effect is again perceived, and like that you have a continuing feedback loop. Now, when we speak about the mind, the older view is that the mind is some kind of a mysterious entity some kind of a homunculus that's sitting somewhere in our brain and that is making all the decisions, but we really don't know how this thing functions. So the mind is not a centralized thing where there is some kind of a consciousness that makes all the decisions. No, the mind is a society of many simple agents. That's to say, the mind consists of modules, each of which is pretty simple, does relatively simple things, but they collaborate. And by collaboration, they can solve complex problems. So collaboration requires a medium of interchange. If we think about the brain, that's typically a network, but within a network there can also be more public workspaces or forums. So all the agents together can tackle complex challenges. So the mind is really distributed. It's not a single centralized decision-making thing. It's a collection of agents. So where does this metaphor of the global brain come from? That if we look more closely at the mind, we see that it's implemented on top of the brain, and the brain basically is a neural network. A neural network means that the agents, the components of the network are neurons, and at the higher level, neuronal assemblies, modules of neurons that work together. The medium that connects the agents are the synapses for the individual neurons. For the higher order neural assemblies, there is something called the global neuronal workspace, where the different assemblies can collaborate with each other. Perception, the function of perception in the mind means that some neurons that are connected to sensory organs get activated. The processing means that this activation is propagated across the network while changing to the propagation. The action means that at the end there are some neurons that steer the muscles, the motor neurons. They transform the activation into real activity. The neural network is a learning system. That means that the intervening connections will be differentially reinforced. If they achieve the right end, they will become stronger. If they don't achieve the right end, they will become weaker. And finally, identify the mind as a coordinated activity emerging from this network of interacting agents. So here is a simple sketch. Information comes in by the sensory neurons. It activates these. It spreads the activation to connected neurons. The links have different strengths, so more activation will go over one link rather than another one. In between, we have a very complicated intervening network. At the end, some motor neurons will be activated, they will perform actions which go back to the world, and we have the feedback loop. Now, I'm speaking in more general terms than neurons. I'm not so much interested in the brain as an actual physical entity. I want to have a slightly more abstract level, which I can also apply to the web. So I'm speaking about agents. And what is an agent? At the very simplest case, an agent is a collection of condition action rules. What's a condition action rule? It's something that says that if some condition X is there, then you should produce some action Y. So X is like the condition that challenges the agent to act, the stimulus that makes the agent act. And Y is what the agent does when it encounters a situation of type X. It will produce some action that transforms this type X situation into a type Y situation. Very simply, a condition action rule is X leads to Y. Whenever X is encountered, Y is produced. We see there already the very rudimentary features of mind. There is a perception because the agent needs to perceive that X is the case. And there is an implicit value because the action Y is done in preference over other actions. The agent prefers Y to other outcomes. That's one simple agent. Now we want to have these simple agents collaborate into a more complex activity. So we consider a collection of agents. Each agent has a collection of condition action rules. It also has access to a number of conditions, which in this case I call the challenges because they are the kind of conditions that will make the agent act. So whenever an agent meets some condition that fits its rule, it will tend to transform this condition or challenge X into a new challenge Y. But since all the agents are working together in one medium, this Y will now become available to the rest of the agents, and now these other agents can continue to work on Y, transform it into Z, and transform Z into something else, and so on. So if we look at the set of all the challenges that are available in the system, that are present in the system, we see that the agents are constantly changing them into different challenges. So the system as a whole is evolving, the state of the system is changing under the collective actions of all agents. And the agents are effectively collaborating via this shared set of challenges, the workspace on which they can work. What we want these agents to do intelligent activity, that the actions should be coordinated. There are two self-organizing mechanisms of coordination that are very simple, that can explain a lot. One of them is called stigmergy. It's a term that originally comes from the study of social insects, termites and ants. What's stigmergy? Stigmergy is very simple. An agent produces an action, that action leaves a trace. Some mark is made, some trace is left that is visible, that is perceivable by the other agents, and that incites these other agents to work further on it. With ants, the traces are typically pheromones. Ants leave pheromones that attract other ants to continue the work. But this is also the mechanism that's used in Wikipedia and other open source communities. How does Wikipedia self-organize? Somebody writes a text on some page. Somebody else interested in that subject reads that page, reads a particular sentence and says, aha, no, this is not correct. Let me add a qualification. Let me add something. That person is incited by the trace learned by the other person to correct it, to improve it, to add to it. And the next person who reads the page will now again be stimulated to act further, and like that the page grows and becomes better and better. So stigmergy is one very simple mechanism of coordination that works via this shared workspace. There is another mechanism which is also typical of the brain, which is reinforcement learning. Agents typically are connected via a network in the sense that one agent sends the output of its work directly to another agent. These other agents may or may not work on the challenge. It will be more inclined to work on it if it trusts the agent that sent it. To say, the transmission of challenges between the agents will depend on the strength of the link between the agents. The more the second agent trusts the first one, the more likely the second agent will pick on the challenge that it receives from the first one and work on it. So that's another mechanism, that's the main mechanism used in neural networks. These are two very basic natural mechanisms of self-organization that lead to coordination. A little bit more about what do I mean by coordination. Coordination means activities which together work much more efficiently than they would if they would happen independently. Working together, first of all, means alignment of goals and values. That means the action should not be at cross purposes. If one agent pushes an obstacle to the left and the other one pushes it to the right, basically they are annihilating each other's activity, they are working at cross purposes. Alignment of values does not mean that they should all have the same goals or the same values, it just means that they should choose goals or values that are not incompatible. It's much easier to find things that are not incompatible, to find things that are the same. So they should avoid conflict or friction, and ideally they should find synergy. That means that they find activities so that together they achieve more than they could have done on their own. Second component of coordination is the division of labor. Not all agents can solve all problems. What you want is that each agent will do the problem that it is most skilled at. That also tends to solve organizations so that agents will be attracted to the challenges that they are most skilled at. Workflow is the sequential organization of activities. If an activity cannot do in one step, but needs to go to different steps, it's a process of passing on unfinished tasks to the next agent and the next agent. And finally, aggregation means that if you have lots of agents working in parallel, each producing something, there needs to be a mechanism of putting all these results in place. Like in Wikipedia, you could have a bunch of independent pages, but ideally you would like these pages to have links so that they are connected together and form one larger whole. Now, assuming that I have a bunch of agents, they are coordinated. If they are sufficiently coordinated, that means if they're sufficiently aligned, if there's sufficiently good workflow, aggregation, division of labor, and so on, then I can see that they're starting to work like a coherent system, or what I might call a super agent, an agent consisting out of agents. That means this super system has its own value system, has its collective perception of challenges, has its distributed knowledge of intelligence, because different agents will have different skills, will have different knowledge, will have different things to do, will have a coherent value system. Coherent, as I said, does not mean that all agents have the same values. They each can have their own values as long as these values are not in contradiction. And they have distributed action. Each agent performs certain actions, but together with their actions they can tackle very complicated problems. So this is a general abstract cybernetic model of mind. I have not yet specified what those agents are. I suggested that agents may be neurons or maybe neuronal assemblies. Now I want to look at more complex agents, namely in the first part, human agents. Agents can tackle challenges individually or in groups, but I can also look at agents that are artificial, artifacts, technological agents, robots, computers, software programs, sensors, even simple machines, tools. All of these are agents because they act on certain challenges and they extend our human mind into the outside world. And then, of course, I can have mixed agents where I have, let's say, an operator of a crane, which is partly human, partly technological, and I can have much more complicated agents like a ship is a group of people and instruments that together navigate and steer a complex course. And these mixed systems will have what I would call distributed cognition. Their knowledge, their skills will be distributed over many human and non-human agents. So now I finally come to the stage where I can speak about a mind that is not only distributed, but that is globally distributed. So globally distributed, that means that I imagine that all the human and technological agents on this planet together would form one super agent. So do I really call this a mind? At this stage, we are kind of still in an ambivalent situation, but in the longer term, I would call this global network and mind if it fulfills two conditions. There should be sufficient coordination. Perceptions, values, and actions must be sufficiently coordinated. We can't yet say that our global society is very well coordinated. If you look, for example, at reactions to the war in Syria, clearly there is a lack of coordination there, which in part has to do with different perceptions of what's going on, different values about what is important, and different actions about what should be done. But in principle, this coordination tends to self-organize on the condition that I have a sufficiently high bandwidth communication medium. That means that all these agents can exchange information, can learn from each other, can reinforce their links, can find stigmergic connections. So this is the process of self-organization. I don't have the time to go into much detail here. I just want to mention the recent development. That is a theory called chemical organization theory, which is a very simple mathematical theory of this kind of self-organization, where you can see that networks of conditioned action rules actually self-organize pretty easily on the condition that they have this common workspace to which they can exchange information. A second thing I would want to have to call something a mind is not only that it's coordinated, but it has a distinct identity. That means that there's some kind of a boundary around it. I can say this is a whole. This is not just a bunch of different things that are partly independent, partly collaborating, but something that is really a whole. And that's why I speak about the globally distributed mind. We can't really subdivide our society into nation states or in organizations. These are local subdivisions, but all of these two globalizations, they all interconnect, they all interact, they cannot ignore each other. So if we want to have this super agent emerge, the only way that it can be is a planetary mind, because the only way that we can create a true social boundary is space. We are still all limited to this planet. So this is the general abstract vision. I want now to implement it more concretely into science, and that is what our institute, the Global Brain Institute, is doing. We are building a simulation model of this assumed self-organization in which the web will become more and more like a distributed intelligence or global brain. What are the basic assumptions of our simulation? That the social networks of people can be modeled similar to neural networks. So the agents are the individual people or artifacts, and the agents are connected via links, like for example the friendship links in Facebook or the follower links in Twitter. And these links represent basically just, you will tend to react to an email you get from a friend, you will not tend to react to an email that's a spam email that's sent to everybody. The second principle of our simulation is that we use another mechanism that is typical for neural networks of a brain, that is spreading activation. Spreading activation means some of the agents are activated, that means they become active, they find a challenge that activates them, they perform an action, and this activation spreads. That means an agent works on a challenge and then propagates the challenge to a next agent. So agents are activated one after another. If this propagation of challenges is successful by some standard, then the link will be reinforced. Via reinforcement, the network will learn the way a neural network learns, and it will become better, it will become more efficient in solving problems. Here's a picture to illustrate this propagation of challenges. Let's say this is some kind of an organization. It may be a firm, it may be a bureaucracy, it may be our institute. You see that there are incoming links. Some challenges come in. Challenges are typically problems, questions, opportunities. Let's say that this lady receives a challenge, puts it on her computer, and then she's linked to these two people. She needs to decide, should it go to this guy or to this guy? She passes on to this guy. This guy writes it down in a notebook. That notebook gets stored somewhere in a library for later use, but at the same time, he uses his computer to work on it, passes it on to this guy, who maybe passes it on to this guy, who eventually gets rid of the challenge. There's an output out of the system. So here is the input, here is the output. That's the general model of distributed cognition via propagation of challenges. So what is then distributed challenge processing? Some challenge enters the system. It's processed by one or more agents. That agent propagates the challenge to agent that it is linked to. And the idea that each agent works on a challenge because it can extract some benefit from it. The assumption is a challenge is either a problem that needs to be dealt with, otherwise you get a penalty, or it's an opportunity that needs to be dealt with because by dealing with it, you extract some benefit. And the assumption is that as challenges are being processed, they get what we call relaxation. That means the challenge disappears. There is no more benefit to be extracted. There is no more problem to be solved. The situation has gone back to normal. So collectively, the agents will process complex challenges via this propagation mechanism. Here is a representation of our simulation. We have a source, which is a program that generates new challenges. The squares are the challenges. The squares enter the queue of an agent. So this thing is an agent. It has a queue, that means a list of challenges it has received. It prioritizes the most important challenge. It processes it. It may decide to propagate it to other. Potentially, it could process it completely so that nothing is left for propagation, but if it can only process it partially it will propagate it to agents that it's linked with. Agents receive challenges either from the source or from other agents. Challenges that are no longer words attempting to simply disappear out of the system, but the sink, cleaning of unused challenges. Now, I won't have the time to go into detail about the mathematical model. I will probably go pretty quickly skip through these slides just to show you that this all can be formalized. So, our formalization is that we start from situation. A situation is a state of the world which initially is neutral. It can become a challenge if an agent decides that the situation is different from its ideal situation. And a situation is just a list of numbers. It's what we call the state vector. These vector components represent potential values, things that may be valuable to the agent, and they can be valuable in the positive sense if they're larger than 0. There are potential benefits that the agent could extract. If they're smaller than 0, there are potential penalties. That means if the agent does not successfully deal with them, the agent will lose benefits. Now the challenges, here it's where it becomes interesting. We assume that different agents have different ideal situations, different values, or what we call need vectors. The need vector is the ideal situation for a particular agent. So that is a situation that for this agent would be fully satisfactory, meaning that the agent is not inclined to do anything. It will only act if the situation is not fully satisfactory. So what is then the challenge is the difference between this ideal situation, the need, and the actual situation. If there is a difference, that means that the agent should act. Ideally, the agent relaxes the challenge to 0. That means it makes sure that the factual situation and ideal situation are the same. Using these data, these numbers, we can now calculate what is the total benefit that is present in a challenge. We have to take into account that the penalty is negative. So I will not go into the details here, but the formula here is that this is what the agent maximally can extract as a benefit. The agent processes the challenge. Again, it's a mathematical model, it's a simplification. I don't say this is realistic, it's meant to have a model that can be done mathematically. Since agents are working on vectors, the logical, the simplest way for them to process them is by multiplying these vectors with a matrix. So it changes a challenge C to a new challenge C star by multiplying it with the processing matrix, where the processing matrix represents the ability, the skill of the agent in extracting benefits. So the matrix will be such that generally the C star will be smaller than the C, given that the agent tries to reduce the challenge to 0, but it will not be fully successful. Agents have limited skills, limited abilities. We can then calculate how much benefits the agent can extract. It tries to reduce C1 to 0, but it can only reduce it to C star. C star is not exactly as much as it be, so there will not be a maximum, there will only be a limited benefit extracted by each agent. Then the network. I assume that the agents form the nodes in a directed, weighted network. That means a network that consists of links from one agent AI to one agent AJ. And these links have a weight, where the weight is a number between 0 and 1, which represents the degree of trust that the one agent has in the other agents. These represent a social connection between the agents. And that's again the representation. The reinforcement of the links is that whenever a challenge is transmitted from some agent AI to AJ, the recipient may extract some benefit from it. The bigger the benefit that the recipient extracts, the more the link will become strong. Because if the recipient says, I get a very nice challenge from this agent that gives me a lot of benefit. He's a nice guy, I like him. Next time he sends me something, I will work on it. So the link strength increases with an amount proportional to the benefit. And then the most important thing is the distributed intelligence. How do we measure the distributed intelligence in this model? That's a measure of the effectiveness of coordination. So the assumption is that through this learning process of reinforcement, the network will start to coordinate more and more efficiently. And that means that the average benefits collected by all the agents will increase. So the distributed intelligence is defined as the average benefits relative to the average benefit if there would not be a network. If there would not be a network would mean the agents just get their challenges directly from the generator of challenges. That means from nature, from the world. They are not coordinated, they are not cooperating. So we assume that this benefit extracted with a network is larger than the benefit extracted without a network, and the proportion of the two is the distributed intelligence of the network. So what's the dynamics that we expect from this model? We expect this model to self-organize towards some approximate attractor state, which means that we assume that this distributed intelligence will increase up to some limit. That's the general assumption. Unfortunately, the model is quite complex because what I have sketched here is just a small part of it. We even have equivalents for the intelligence of the agents, for the individual intelligence of the agent, for the roots of the agents, for the degree to which the agents know their connections. So the model is much more complicated than I sketched here. But this is a prototype simulation that we did with 10,000 agents with 10-dimensional vectors, and where you see that there is a trend for the average benefit to increase, but we need to do many more experiments before we can say that this is really statistically significant. Finally, the next step in science is you not only make a model, you also want to test that model, compare it with the real world. What is the real world in this case? Well, we're speaking about the web. The closest equivalent we have are social media networks like Facebook or Twitter. So we have to map the real elements of the social media network onto elements of our model. So we map individuals to agents. The friendships or the connections in the social network we map to links. The posts, that means the texts that people post, correspond to the situations. And we assume that these people have shown some kind of an interest profile, the kind of things they like. We map onto their needs. Now the only thing we need to do is the posts and the interest profiles are normally texts. Our network functions with vectors, that means lists of numbers. So we need to convert these texts to vectors. And one possible technique for that is latent semantic indexing. There are methods to transform documents into vectors. So if our model would work well, which we're still far from there, I must tell you, the model should be able to predict how posts tend to propagate. Of course, it will not make deterministic predictions, but at least it should make predictions that are much better than chance. There should be a significant correlation between the predictions of our model and the actual propagation. In conclusion, I have presented a cybernetic model of the mind that is, in say, quite simple, which sees the mind as a network, a distributed network of agents that are coordinated in their activities. Because the model is so general, we can apply it as well to the brain as to the World Wide Web. Because we can see the web as a network of human software and machines, which are all collaborating agents that are linked by the web. And we make the assumption that these different agents are coordinating. The coordination between them is at this moment self-organizing. We are far yet from ideal coordination. It's a process that takes a lot of time, especially since the network is incredibly complex and it's constantly changing. But our assumption is that this coordination is self-organizing at this moment. In order to better understand the dynamics of this the self-organization, our institute is developing a simulation of that hopefully will give us a better view of how quick that self-organization is, and what are maybe the features that can facilitate it, or on the contrary, make it more difficult. If our general theory is correct, then the web is indeed developing this distributed intelligence. It is becoming more and more coordinated, and is becoming like a global way of humanity. And in my first lecture this morning, I kind of sketched you the potential powers of this global brain. These powers are indeed huge. So this is a very important phenomenon. If we could understand it better, I think this is an extremely useful question to investigate. For any more information, you can check our website, Global Brain Institute. Thank you.
Some questions? Yes.
I have the following technical question. Do you see any bifurcations in your mathematical model, like case transitions? If I compare your model with other more simple systems of molecules or ecological species, then one looks for bifurcations which appear with increasing number of nodes or increasing links, and these transitions, qualitative transitions, are then identified with the appearance of new properties, emergent properties. And mine, you said, is something emergent. So we would try to see that it appears not for any number of partners.
That is a very interesting thing in theory. The problem is that we are modeling an extremely complex network that is constantly changing. That means that whatever parameters we put in there, these parameters are not likely to be correct. They are likely to change all the time. There are constantly new technologies that appear. These new technologies mean that people get connected in different ways. Things start to propagate in different ways. So maybe within our model as it is now, we may find such bifurcations or particular attractors, but it's very unlikely that we would find the same one in the real world, because the real world is much more complicated. The real world is the dynamics of the real world is changing while we are speaking about it. So also in our model, we are not really looking for these kind of more deterministic views. We have a lot of random generators in there, because we know that most of these things happening in the real world, basically you cannot predict them. So it should be a model that's robust under a very wide range of parameter values and a very wide range of variation and random properties.
Hi, one quite simple question. At least I think you say you will convert the text to vectors, and then you will the model should predict what how posts tend to propagate. Just to so actually we will analyze the text from the social media, transfer them to vectors, and try to predict what the future,
yes.
at least the vibe of the post. So we could call it this sentiment analysis or such a kind of characteristics. Maybe it will be simpler than exact text.
Sentiment analysis is one thing we are very interested in. One of our advisors is Johan Boll, who has done a lot of work on sentiment analysis. It's one of the things we are keeping in mind, but at the moment in our model there is a mood variable, but we haven't yet experimented with the mood variable, so we don't yet know how it would map onto the actual sentiments in things. It's an interesting question to think about it.
But the idea is to predict what they will read in the text.
Well, it's kind of difficult to predict what people actually will write.
So I say maybe the mood is easier,
no,
higher granularity.
No, what we really would like to do is suppose that on your Facebook page you post something about football, and you have friends that are interested in football and friends who are not interested in football, then the prediction would be that the friends who are interested in football are likely to propagate it to their friends, while the friends who are not interested in football will ignore your post.
So actually how the post will behave in the relation to another agent.
Okay, so there's one
I would like to ask concerning goals, because you spoke about goals also on the writer layer and also on the agent layer. And does it need a goal in order to emerge? This is one question in terms of the overall system. And does it take into consideration that, for example, goals are changing with the knowledge of the world or with the state of the world?
Well, I have come to the conclusion in my studies of cybernetics that goal is one of the most confusing things that we actually better not use too much. That's why I speak about value systems rather than goals. A value system is something much more multidimensional than a goal. A goal is a particular state or collection of states that you would want to reach. A value system is something that evaluates myriads of options according to different criteria and tells you, I would rather go in this direction than in that direction. A goal can at most be a temporary implementation of your value system. That means you see a number of options, you evaluate those options, you choose one as being the best one, so you say, that will be my goal, but while moving towards this goal, new information comes in and you see that what looked like the best one actually is not the best one, you change direction. So goals are at most temporary things. We don't have clear goals, our goals change all the time. What I would like is to have at least a coherent value system, and even our own value systems are not coherent. Sometimes we have contradictory values.